Power Play. I'm Vashi Capellos in Ottawa on this Wednesday. Tonight, NATO on guard.
Know that we stand ready, that we are vigilant, and that we will defend every inch of NATO territory.
Poland, with the help of NATO, shoots down Russian drones that violated their airspace overnight. Poland is calling it a deliberate attack, a claim Russia denies. Is this Russian escalation, and what does that mean for the West's response? In moments, Poland's ambassador to Canada will be here, and I'm going to ask him. Then, we've got some breaking news this hour. Donald Trump ally and key MAGA organizer Charlie Kirk has been shot dead. That is according to the president. The prominent pro-Trump activist for conservative politics on high school and university campuses was shot at Utah Valley University while giving a talk there. We're going to bring you the very latest on this breaking news in just moments. Plus, the list is coming.
Projects that will increase Canada's independence, boost our economy.
The Prime Minister's long-awaited first list of national projects for Fast Track comes out tomorrow, and he set high expectations, promising nation-building enterprises. Our front bench will preview the stakes for the Prime Minister a little bit later on in the show. First, though, I will start this evening with that breaking news out of the United States. A very high-profile conservative political activist and key ally of U.S. President Donald Trump was speaking this afternoon at a university event in Utah. The president has just posted on his social media channels that Charlie Kirk, that key organizer, that key activist who was shot, is dead. I'm going to just pull up the statement from President Trump right now. The great and even legendary Charlie Kirk, it reads, is dead. No one understood or had the heart of the youth in the United States of America better than Charlie. He was loved and admired by all, especially me, and now he is no longer with us. Melania and my sympathies go out to his beautiful wife, Erica, and family. Charlie, we love you. I want to bring in my colleague, Joy Malbin, our Washington bureau chief, who has been tracking this all afternoon. We were looking for some independent confirmation of what the president is saying, if the authorities there. Just want to be transparent with everyone watching. We don't have that. The New York Times is reporting that Charlie Kirk's spokesperson is confirming that he is dead. Fill us in, Joy, on what happened this afternoon.
This is just horrific, what has happened. Charlie Kirk, for many Canadians who don't know who he is, was speaking at an open-air event at this university. An eyewitness told NBC that Kirk was talking about mass shootings, transgender issues. He's very controversial, but he likes to do these open-air debates, and he draws huge crowds. And police say that just after 12 noon, a shot was fired and that Kirk was hit in the neck, according to eyewitnesses, and then he collapsed. Police believe that the shot came from 200 yards away, but the shooter is still at large.
Yeah, what's very interesting is initially the university had said that the shooter was actually in custody and then retracted that a little while longer and said that the shooter, as you put it, is still at large, so nobody is in custody. I had read the president's statement there. You mentioned that, not everyone in Canada would be familiar with this figure. I have to say, when I was trying to understand Donald Trump, I listened to podcasts Charlie Kirk was on. There is no way to overstate his impact on the movement of people that supported Donald Trump. He is a key MAGA figure. What do we need to know about his significance to the Donald Trump world?
Oh, absolutely, Vashi. He's a massive figure in the MAGA movement. He worked with Don Jr. He was often speaking on these controversial issues, promoting Christian values, opposing transgender rights, even questioning vaccines. And he was one of the youngest people to speak at that Republican convention that we were both at last year. His organization, Turning Point USA, was key to Donald Trump's election success. And, this country is struggling with this kind of political violence. There have been 2 attempts on the president's life. There have been these CEO shootings. Minnesota lawmakers and politicians now on both sides of the aisle are condemning this kind of violence. Vashi?
Yeah, I know Yeah, I would note, just to speak to his sort of significance in the political world, how so soon after he was shot, you know, in the little time that in between when the news broke and when President Trump confirmed he was dead, the number of voices, as you put it, on both sides, like Gavin Newsom, who hosted him on his podcast, for example, was right up there. Many Democrat and Republican politicians, even in this country, the leader of the federal conservatives, you know, posted a statement condemning political violence and offering prayers for Charlie Kirk, like a testament, I think, to, and of course you can debate a lot about it, but right now he was a very significant figure.
Absolutely. I mean, he is responsible, many say, for the election of Donald Trump. He appealed to young male voters. His campaign, his Turning Point USA, was responsible for a lot of these open-air debates. My understanding is there wasn't security at this campus, but this is exactly what Charlie Kirk liked. He loved these open-air debates. He loved to challenge people. And this has many people in America thinking about other targeted killings, as the police suspect that this is. I'm thinking of Gabby Giffords when she was targeted because she was a congresswoman, and people didn't agree with what she said. It's a real struggle in this country, the right, the left, tribalism, all of it. And you have a lot of people, like we were talking about, on both sides of the aisle, Republicans and Democrats, saying, this has got to stop. We can have a conversation. You may not like what I'm saying, but don't pull out a gun. The other thing I might add is that in Utah, it's an open carry state. So, I mean, there was no security, but people certainly weren't checking for guns. But this is a very scary, horrific, and shocking time.
Yeah, very much so. Joy, thank you so much. I appreciate the updates. I'm sure we'll be checking in with you throughout the evening. That's our Washington Bureau Chief, Joy Malbon. Just to recap for you, a really significant event unfolding south of the border. This afternoon, Charlie Kirk, a key Donald Trump organizer and voice really for the Trump and MAGA movement, speaking at a Utah university, was shot. Just moments ago, I want to pull up for you President Donald Trump announcing that as a result of that shooting, Charlie Kirk is dead. He wrote, "The great and even legendary Charlie Kirk is dead. No one understood or had the heart of the youth in the United States of America better than Charlie." Trump goes on to say, "He was loved and admired by all, especially me, and now he is no longer with us. Melania and my sympathies go out to his beautiful wife, Erica, and my family. Charlie, we love you." I will say that we have efforted to find some independent confirmation that Mr. Kirk was killed. We know he was shot, of course, but that was killed. We don't yet have that. The New York Times is, however, reporting that his spokesperson has confirmed his death. The university initially said they had a suspect in custody and are now saying that they did not actually have a suspect in custody. So as any new information comes into our newsroom, we will most certainly, and more reaction, I should say, we will most certainly share that with you throughout the evening. I do want to also now turn to some developing news out of Europe after Polish and NATO aircraft responded to at least a dozen Russian drones in Polish airspace overnight. Poland and NATO jets shot down at least 3 of those drones. They said those were the ones that posed a direct threat. Poland is also now invoking what's known as Article 4, launching a formal discussion with NATO allies, including Canada, about Russian threats to its security. Warsaw says, and this is key, that Russia deliberately targeted Poland. Moscow denies that allegation. Canada, meanwhile, says it stands firmly with Poland. Here's Foreign Affairs Minister Anita Anand and Defense Minister David McGuinty speaking on the sidelines of the Liberal National Caucus in Edmonton earlier.
Canada's position as a founding member of NATO, as a key ally in the alliance, is to support Poland in the decisions that it makes as a sovereign country. The Russian drone attacks violated the airspace and therefore the sovereignty of Poland.
There are some public pronouncements by Russia. There are some public pronouncements by Belarus authorities. I don't think we can take a lot of what comes from Russia right now at face value.
Poland's prime minister now says his country is the closest it has been to open conflict since the Second World War. Poland's ambassador to Canada, Witold Zaleski, joins me now. Hi, Ambassador. Pleasure to welcome you back. I certainly wish it were under different circumstances, but thank you for making the time.
Thank you for having me.
I wanted to start off on a question for people who have maybe been acquainted, of course, with Russia's actions over the past number of years, but not paying attention to everything very closely at this moment. In your view, how significant is it in the greater context what happened overnight in Poland?
Poland and our region has been tested and in so many ways attacked by Russians in recent years, I would say. The cyber warfare is going on permanently. And we did have in Poland a number of arsons, kinetic attacks conducted by the Russians. This time we are dealing with something absolutely new. We did have drones, Russian drones flying into Poland accidentally. This time it's an organized drone aggression on the territory of a NATO country. 19 drones coming from, and these were, I mean, don't believe in lies that are produced by the propaganda machine of Russia. These were Russian drones coming from Belarus, and they were not accidentally going to Poland. They were directed to the Polish territory with the idea to test our capabilities.
I want to delve into that point because that is what Russia is saying, is pushing back on, right? As you mentioned, your foreign minister has been explicit in saying that this was deliberate. He said, his words, do not believe what Russia is putting forward about this. Russia has said, I'm just going to read it for you and for the audience and give you the opportunity to respond. The Defense Ministry has unequivocally reaffirmed that the strike did not include any targets in the territory of the Republic of Poland and that the range of the drones that delivered a strike at the Ukrainian defense industry facilities, which according to Warsaw entered Poland's airspace, is below 700 kilometers. So they are essentially trying to argue that this was an accident. And once again, 19 drones. Your response?
It's, well, these are lies. And recently we had a number of Russian social media accounts were reestablished in order to provide a sort of backbone for the messaging that you're presenting right now. And there is a lot of misinformation being introduced into the social media sphere, especially. Among those lies are, the ones that you just quoted, but there are also many others saying that, suggesting that this attack was in some sort of way sponsored by Ukraine, that some other actors are involved. There is miscommunications, but lies being presented in the media, presenting the conflicts internal in NATO. So it's the typical Russian propaganda, typical methodology. My kind request is to listen to authorities of our countries, to the authorities, because they are providing accurate information.
So the information that has been provided is that this was deliberate, which I think carries with it a very big weight. I mean, to be very candid with the audience, this is Russia, which has been in war with Ukraine, declared war on Ukraine a number of years ago.
Yeah.
Now, going into another country, putting over the airspace at least of another country. What are the implications, in your view, for Poland and its allies, including Canada, NATO more largely?
It's a very serious situation, and we are as I mentioned before, we've been dealing with Russian aggression for years. Right now, not to say for centuries, which is true as well, but for recent years, and we quickly, successfully invoked Article 4 of the NATO treaty, and we have a huge support of the NATO allies. And we are in very close consultations. And with this, I would like to say thank you to Canadian authorities, with whom I was in contact since yesterday night. And today we had the reactions of the Prime Minister, of your Minister of Defense, of your Minister of Foreign Affairs, and these were very good, strong statements. So we are, coordinating closely.
There have been, many statements of support, as you mentioned, even offers of more tangible support from some European countries, including, I believe, both the UK and France, to provide additional air support for Poland in light of what's occurred. A lot of focus today also on where the U.S. falls in all of this. The President of the United States wrote on his social media channel, "What's with Russia violating Poland's airspace with drones? Here we go." My understanding from the White House is there was to be a conversation with his counterpart in Poland today. Does Poland feel like the level of support from the United States is adequate to combat the threat Russia poses to your country?
It's from the Polish perspective, the American stance on guarantees for Poland, for our regions, were always positive. We had a visit of Poland's president Karol Nawrocki just recently into Washington. A very strong message came out from that meeting saying that the United States is providing guarantees to Poland, keeping the American forces which are present there, and if it's necessary, it will extend its military presence in Poland. So a very solid, I would say, communication. It was confirmed today in a phone call conversation that ended an hour or 2 hours ago between President Nawrocki and President Trump. So this is an important message for the entire NATO structure. Otherwise, we had very important communication between other of our leaders. Prime Minister Tusk spoke to a number of partners, including the Secretary General of NATO. Deputy Prime Minister Radosław Sikorski spoke to a number of leaders of the international organizations and foreign ministers, including the Ukrainian ministers and Secretary of State of the United States.
If I could put it plainly, does Poland feel like NATO has its back? Yes, we do. I can feel it in Canada. I can feel it from what I'm hearing from the Polish politicians. Yeah. One final question for you, and that is, I guess, around the bigger picture, because in the last month there have been many conversations through meetings that took place between the President of the United States and the President of Russia, as well as the President of Ukraine, that, could there be some sort of peace arrangement arrived at, some sort of negotiations toward peace? What message does what's happened to your country send in that regard?
Well, we are all observing the conversation between Washington and Moscow, and we all understand that there's been so much done by President Trump to allow Putin to come to the table, to sit down and negotiate some sort of resolution, peace. And it seems that Mr. Putin continuously is playing his game, if not to say that he is, playing with the American president. And I'm quite certain this cannot fly for too long.
Okay, I will leave it on that note. Ambassador, thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
That's Poland's ambassador to Canada, Witold Jalski. We do want to, of course, keep you on top of that breaking news out of the United States. Donald Trump confirming one of his key organizers, a key MAGA activist, Charlie Kirk, who was shot at a Utah university while giving a talk there, is dead. He writes, "The great and even legendary Charlie Kirk is dead. No one understood or had the heart of the youth in the United States of America better than Charlie. He was loved and admired by all, especially me, and now he is no longer with us. Melania and my sympathies go out to his beautiful wife, Erica, and family. Charlie," the president writes, "we love you." Charlie Kirk was just 31 years old. Again, it's Donald Trump, the president of the United States, saying he is dead. He leaves behind his wife and 2 children. He was giving that talk, as he does at many universities and colleges throughout the year, in open air in Utah. Initially, the university said that a suspect was in custody. They have now retracted that statement, so it appears that the suspect is still at large. We're efforting to get more information from law enforcement, of course, in Utah, and reaction continues to pour in. We're going to have more reaction for you on the other end of a short commercial break. We're back in just a moment. Welcome back to Power Play. We continue to track that developing story, that breaking news out of the United States, that one of Donald Trump's key organizers and a key really conservative political activist, Charlie Kirk, has been shot and killed at a university event in Utah just this afternoon. Donald Trump recently took to social media to confirm himself that, in fact, that shooting had resulted in Charlie Kirk dying. And then he also, in addition, there he is right there confirming it. But he has also now posted on social media that the flags at the White House, as a result, will fly at half-mast. I believe we have a live shot of that right now. There you go, in honor of Charlie Kirk, as Donald Trump writes it. He has already, those flags, I believe, are already being lowered. I will say there's reaction from not just Donald Trump and his supporters, but really across the political spectrum in the United States to what's taken place, including a post just now on social media from former U.S. President Joe Biden, who writes, "There is no place in our country for this kind of violence. It must end now. Jill and I are praying for Charlie Kirk's family and loved ones." Now, the situation in Utah is very fluid. Initially, the university had said that a suspect was in custody, and then about an hour later retracted that. So the suspect at this point is still at large. We have no real information from law enforcement in Utah beyond that. Nothing about motive, who the suspect is. By saying they're at large, are they still kind of on the run, or do they know the whereabouts? Is there any public safety risk? There are a lot more questions right now than we have answers. We do, though, through the president, have confirmation that that shooting of Charlie Kirk, a key figure in MAGA politics, in Donald Trump's orbit, that did result in his death. So we will continue, as this reaction pours in, to share it with you. In any new information we get from law enforcement, I should say, we will definitely convey to you as well. We want to turn back to domestic politics here in Canada, because we're just days away from a long-awaited showdown between Mark Carney and Pierre Poilievre. Finally, they'll go head-to-head in the House of Commons now that Pierre Poilievre has won back a seat in a by-election. We've got some brand new polling from Nick Nanos tracking federal vote intention, which shows the two leading parties separated by 10 points. I want to bring in Nick Nanos, who is the, of course, founder and chief data scientist at Nanos Research, and also our pollster of record here at CTV. Hi, Nick. It's good to see you. Thanks for making the time. So let's start off with the top line numbers, because we've got not total congruence between all the polls right now. Some show a closer race. You're still showing the Liberals. What is your take on sort of the mood of the country when it comes to these two parties?
You know, what's interesting is that for the Liberals, you know, they, in the last federal election, they had around 43% support, and our tracking, they still have about 43%. So that hasn't really changed. But, you know, the thing is that what we've seen is the NDP are doing a little better, and the Conservatives are not doing as well in the tracking. If you remember, Vashi, during the last election, Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives were really good at targeting working Canadians with their kind of cost of living stuff. And, you know, what we've seen perhaps is maybe some of those individuals that were opting for Pierre Poilievre in the past, those working Canadians, are perhaps drifting back to the New Democrats. But, you know, the fact of the matter is 43% for the Liberals, still pretty good. And the kicker is on the preferred prime minister number, right? Like, Mark Carney being ahead by like 20 points. And I think that's the real story. For Pierre Poilievre, he has to start to build his personal brand to be more competitive with Mark Carney, because Pierre Poilievre is trailing his own party. How
do issues factor into it? Because there's a lot of conversation right now happening. I know at caucus that they're gathered in Edmonton, at cabinet last week in North York, about like, what do Canadians care about? Have they become somewhat insulated from the ups and downs of Trump and able to focus on other big issues? For example, the prospect of losing their job, or inflation, or crime, or immigration? Or are they still fixated on the Trump issue? What does your data show you about that?
In our weekly tracking on the top national issue of concern, focus on Trump and U.S. relations is still the top issue. But the interesting thing, Vashi, is when you look at the top four, they're all directly or indirectly pocketbook issues. So top, Trump and trade, jobs and the economy. Then you have kind of inflation, the cost of housing. So think of Canadians worried about paying for the bills. Think of Canadians worried about their jobs, wondering what will happen in the next 6 months, wondering what will happen with the trade relationship. So there's a certain level, or a high level of anxiety that's underpinning a lot of those views right now. And, you know, for the Liberals, they've really got to start to deliver, because how long will Canadians wait to transition from the Liberals talking about things to delivering on some of the promises that they have.
What's your gut tell you about that?
Well, we did ask a survey, I think it was with you, Vashi, at CTV News, and a majority of Canadians wanted to see something happen by the end of the year. So this, by Christmas time or by the end of the year, in the ideal world, Canadians would like to see something that the Liberals have accomplished when it comes to infrastructure projects or when it comes to the economy or perhaps advancing discussions on the trade dialogues.
Well, we're supposed to get an announcement tomorrow on major projects, so we shall see. We'll talk about that with our front bench in a moment. I also wanted to ask you about immigration because it's become a real flashpoint, and I think all signs point to it being a big issue in the House of Commons and outside even in the fall. You've done some polling for the Globe, which I found very interesting. It's not necessarily the top concern for all Canadians, but we've seen an evolution of views on the issue writ large.
Absolutely. Actually, what we're seeing is that Canadians are increasingly wanting to see the number of either new individuals brought into the country or temporary foreign workers to be actually diminished. And you can see that 7 out of every 10 Canadians would like to see the numbers reduced. This doesn't mean that they're against immigration. I think this is more about right-sizing or calibrating kind of the number of new Canadians that we need. But, I think in an environment where people are worried about their job, they're worried about the economy, they're wondering what the future has in store, that the appetite for more immigration is much more tempered than it has been in the past, and people would like to see things kind of adjusted.
It's interesting that you delineate between, we're against immigration as a concept versus, we would like to see more adjudication over it, essentially.
Yeah, and the thing is I always look at it in terms of kind of the direction of the numbers, and Canadians are a welcoming country. We're a country primarily of immigrants for many people that live in Canada, but the thing is that what we have seen is that at least under the Justin Trudeau government, that those numbers really ramp up. And there are a lot of new Canadians that came into the country, and people are still committed to immigration, but they think that the numbers should just be a little more tempered in terms of the volume.
One last survey I wanted to ask you about that you did exclusively for us, because we're having this big conversation about, if not the U.S., where, particularly, specifically, I should say, when it comes to trade. There are not many markets out there that can even come close to the size that the U.S. offers us. None of them are as proximus to us.
Right.
But there is a big conversation going on right now about China. And given our, antagonistic relationship, the national security concerns, how much do we dive into more trade with China? You did some polling for us. How has Canadians' views on that changed?
Oh, it's significantly. Back in 2020, there was a benchmark where we asked Canadians about whether they thought trade with China should increase, decrease, or stay the same. Back in 2020, when we asked this question, 10%. 1 out of every 10 Canadians thought that trade with China should increase. That now has jumped to 36% of Canadians who believe that trade with China should increase. And I don't think this is a result of anything that China has done. This is more about a reaction to the United States, where we know in our other polling that Canadians want to see almost like a portfolio approach. They want to see us doing more trade with Europe. They want to see us doing more trade with Asia, with China. A lot of that in response to making sure that we're resilient, still trading a lot with the United States, but looking at almost like a multilateral strategy on that front.
Okay, very interesting. Nick, thanks as always. Appreciate the insights.
Okay.
Nick Nanos is the Chief Data Scientist and founder of Nanos Research. I do want to turn back to what's happening in the United States. We continue to track that developing news. Let's pull up the live shot of the White House, because the President of the United States, in confirming the death of one of his key supporters, Charlie Kirk, also indicated that the flags at the White House would be lowered to honor Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk, again, as I mentioned, a key sort of MAGA figure and organizer, supporter of Donald Trump's, was shot, and according to Donald Trump, killed in Utah at a university event this afternoon. There you can see the flags have been lowered. We await further details from law enforcement about the suspect, which they have most recently said is still at large. They initially said the suspect had been arrested or was in custody, and then later retracted that and said that the suspect was still at large. Lots of reaction coming in from both Canada and the United States, different parties in the United States. Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, the attack on Charlie Kirk is disgusting, vile, and reprehensible. In the United States of America, we must reject political violence in every form. Pierre Poilievre, the leader of the Federal Conservative Party here, writing, "We must all strongly denounce the shooting of Charlie Kirk. Political violence is never justified. The attacker must be brought to justice and free speech must be upheld. Pray for Mr. Kirk and his family." We will continue to track developments there after a short commercial break. We're back in a moment. Welcome back to Power Play. We return to that breaking news out of the United States, confirmed by U.S. President Donald Trump that one of his key supporters, key organizers, 31-year-old Charlie Kirk, has been shot and killed. Images started emerging earlier this afternoon out of a university campus in Utah, where Charlie Kirk was delivering a speech much like ones that or a talk, I guess you could say, much like ones that he has delivered on hundreds of university or college campuses over the past number of years. Those images emerged, as I mentioned, pretty early in the afternoon of him being shot very directly. They're very, very uncomfortable and tragic images. So we, of course, will not be sharing them with you. But very, very shortly thereafter, about an hour thereafter, Donald Trump posted this on his social media channels, confirming the death of Charlie Kirk, saying, that the great and even legendary Charlie Kirk is dead. No one understood or had the heart of the youth in the United States of America better than Charlie. He was loved and admired by all, especially me, and now he is no longer with us. Melania and my sympathies go out to his beautiful wife, Erica, and family. Charlie, we love you. Not too long thereafter, he posted a second statement on social media indicating that the flags at the White House would be lowered in honor of Charlie Kirk, and I believe we can show you a live shot of the White House right now that does indicate those flags have been lowered. We continue to look for more reaction and more details, really confirmed facts from the law enforcement in Utah. They had initially said that the suspect was in their custody, and then not long after that retracted that statement and said the suspect was still at large. So far on our radar, no update yet from law enforcement on that, but a lot of reaction to the death of Charlie Kirk, to his assassination, essentially coming in from all sorts of different political parties, including the leader of the federal conservatives here, Pierre Poilievre, wrote, "We must all strongly denounce the shooting of Charlie Kirk. Political violence is never justified. The attacker must be brought to justice and free speech must be upheld. Pray for Mr. Kirk," Poilievre wrote, "and his family." Joe Biden, former U.S. President Joe Biden, I should point out, politicians from every political stripe posting on social media about this. "There is no place in our country," President Biden writes, "for this kind of violence. It must end now. Jill and I are praying for Charlie Kirk's family and loved ones." So this situation, as I've been saying all during the program, is very fluid. Not a lot of confirmation through law enforcement, but certainly Donald Trump is posting about Charlie Kirk's death, and the reaction is really flooding in. If you aren't familiar with him, he is a central figure to kind of the world in which Donald Trump operates and his supporters. He was, for years, someone who espoused very similar views, in a way, to Donald Trump and talked about them on university campuses, encouraged and sought debate on those issues, certainly, and became kind of like a viral figure online and in other aspects. And so this will have a major impact on politics in the United States. I can't determine the exact nature of that impact, but I think it's safe to say it will be significant. We will continue to track any more details on this. As soon as they come in, we'll share them with you. We do want to bring in our front bench now to talk about both this development and, of course, what's happening politically here in Canada. With me this evening, Sharon Carr. She's a CTV News political analyst and former Deputy Chief of Staff to former Finance Minister Bill Morneau. Laura D'Angelo is with Enterprise Canada and previously worked in Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's office. Jamie Allerton is a conservative strategist and the founder and principal of Canaptus, and Sebastian Scamsey is former director of media relations to conservative leader Pierre Poilievre. Hey guys, it's good to have you with us tonight. Laura, I'll start. We have to start on this topic just because it's so, he was such a political figure. We have so few details about what actually happened other than what we were able to see, with our own eyes, and the fact that the president is saying he's dead. How significant do you think this is?
I think this is one of the biggest things to happen in U.S. politics in a long time, and it's going to, I think, change the landscape and change the tensions in the U.S. that are already very high, even more so. And I think a lot of what we're seeing come out from other political leaders, that political violence is terrible no matter what happens and no matter what party, is something that we all really need to remember and hold on to and send our thoughts to his family.
Sebastian, for people who aren't necessarily familiar with Charlie Kirk here in Canada, in your assessment, like how central a figure is he politically in the U.S.? Was he, pardon me, in the U.S.?
Yeah, I mean, of course, I have to start off by expressing a sincere sorrow over this tragedy. I think it is obvious as a political assassination that occurred. For Canadians who don't know or weren't familiar with following U.S. politics, I think he had an incredible voice for several years. He is, I want to remind viewers, 31 years old. This is a very young person.
Yeah.
Who, I mean, it obviously adds to the tragedy, but it is important to remember the activism that he initiated and brought forward. I think I'm almost at a loss for words, frankly, because of how harrowing this is. For those who had the misfortune of seeing the video, I think it is extremely shocking. And regrettably, these incidents are occurring in the States. Of course, President Trump had 2 assassination attempts against him, which was, nearly destabilized the campaign and obviously the election. This is I think, very obviously dangerous, and I'm not really sure how the temperature gets cooled down from here.
Yeah, it's horrifying. There's no other way to put it. Jamie, your thoughts?
Try to let in with here, Vashi. I think you're going to see people from across the political spectrum denounce political violence and say this has no place in our system. And I think the other thing that's probably going to revolve or come after this is the reality that it's going to be harder to host public events and gather people because security costs are going to go up, speaking fees are going to go up to pay for all the logistics, and it's going to be harder to have events on places like university campuses and public forums when you essentially have to fortify them to ensure that there's proper screening in places to prevent things like these from happening. So it's going to mean democratic engagement goes down. I think obviously south of the border, what goes on there is quite different than what goes on in Canada. And I know often here in this country, we have our front row seat and watch as if we're watching reality TV and feel like we have a seat at the table. But I think the more we can focus issues closer to home and talk about the grappling issues of what we need to deal with as a country today, that in and of itself would have a cooling effect on our politics here at home.
If you're just joining us now, a key Donald Trump supporter and organizer, Charlie Kirk, just 31 years old, was shot and killed this afternoon in Utah, speaking to a university crowd, something he had done on multiple occasions. Sharon, your thoughts?
Listen, I think this is a really hard one for a lot of people, and I struggle with those who are trying to find some sort of justification around what happened. There's a lot of chatter happening online around the type of speech he had. I don't care, quite honestly. It doesn't matter to me what he believed in and what he preached or what he talked about. At the end of the day, politics is secondary. You're human first, and for someone to do this, it's a sad day not only for the U.S., but it's just a sad day for. It should be a sad day for everyone. No one should find political violence acceptable. It does not matter what your political stripe is. We are seeing a rise in toxicity, and we're seeing a rise in people very willingly to speak out towards people they disagree with. And I truly hope that the man who did this has the book thrown at him, and everyone should be denouncing it. Nobody, absolutely nobody, should try to find a justification, because it doesn't matter what his opinion on anything was. He was 31 years old, and this should not have happened.
Yeah, good point to end this part of our discussion on. And certainly, as I've conveyed to our audience tonight, if there is new information that arises from law enforcement or more reaction we can share with you, we will throughout the rest of the evening. Since we are all focused on Canadian politics as well, I do want to turn to some of the big stories that we're covering in that vein. In particular, tomorrow we anticipate that the Prime Minister will make an announcement about this so-called major projects list, something that he has telegraphed now for a very long time. It will be projects that are deemed to be, Laura, in the national interest. The report from Radio-Canada today is that no pipelines on the list. Liberal ministers lined up or even MPs today to say, don't worry, this is just the first round. Even Danielle Smith was kind of reflexively saying, I'm not expecting this to be the end of the road. How big of a deal for the Carney government is tomorrow?
I think it's a huge deal for the Carney government. And I think that this piece in particular is really important for the Prime Minister himself, right? His team has tied him very closely to the nation-building project narrative and strategy. And so how he communicates about it and how his ministers communicate about it are really important. I think it's really interesting that we're already seeing Danielle Smith coming out and hedging a little. And I think it shows some of the work that Carney and his team have been doing in the background with the premiers. And I would say that that's something he's been very good at so far since he won, is managing that first minister's table. And I think that's where we're starting to see some of his business leader skills really come out in politics. And I think that this list, these winners and losers, frankly, is also something that he needs to message carefully. But remember that this is something that Canadians also asked for, right? They voted for him because he has a more business approach to some of government. And that's often what happens in business, is winners and losers are picked and people's feelings might get hurt.
What is the, I guess, potential communications impact, Sebastian, for lack of a better word, that you anticipate from this? And I ask because I feel like the expectations were set very high by the Prime Minister. We're going to get things built, build, baby, build. We're going to get things done. Now this list is coming out, but even that is a list of things that can get approved and fast-tracked in 2 years. Like, in political terms, it's not like next month you're going to see this LNG terminal build. So what does that do to the potential political impact of an announcement like tomorrow?
Well, Vashi, I think you asked the correct question, frankly, and I think some of the context you provide is very accurate. I'm less concerned about the Prime Minister's communications struggles. I am concerned, however, for his vocal cords. He has been exercising them immensely the last 6 months he has been Prime Minister. He's had meetings with everybody under the sun. Last week when we were talking about this, he was having his strategy session with his illustrious cabinet. He's had pajama parties with premiers. I mean, we have heard a lot from the Prime Minister. We have not seen a single thing. And so when I hear that there is a projects list that is coming out tomorrow. And of course, that list doesn't include a pipeline, which I think if you asked any average Canadian what a transnational nation-building, uniting project would be, I think most people would say actually a pipeline that runs across this country would fit the bill. When we're hearing that the expectations are so profoundly low and that really there's only going to be more talk before there's any doing, I think that's very disappointing and concerning for Canadians and our economy. We need these projects now, and we can't really afford to wait 2 more years on the promise that maybe something will be approved by a new office that now exists in Calgary. I think it's deeply troubling.
Sharon, Sebastian's comments reflect something that we've heard frequently, right, from the Conservatives over the past, I think, close to a month, which is, yes, you've been talking a lot, but you actually, when are you going to do something? I feel as though the Carney government views this announcement as a proof point to try and counter that. What will ensure, from your perspective, that it actually materializes as such?
Well, there's a lot. To be honest, there's a lot. Now, what I've been hearing in terms of tomorrow and what they're going to be announcing is there is this concern from a lot of people that why are we hearing there's no pipelines potentially? And to Sebastian's point here, I'll speak from my own experience here is that as a very pro-pipeline liberal, one who spent a very long time trying to get a cross-country pipeline built when Energy East was trying to get built under the Harper government, it is not easy. What I am hearing, though, is that there are conversations between Alberta and Ottawa about a potential proponent who would be willing to do so. Without a proponent who's willing to sink in all that money to get a pipeline built and a company that's willing to do it, you can't build pipelines out of nowhere. And no one wants the government to be in the business of more pipelines. We did that with TMX because the risk was high and we needed to save that. But for tomorrow, we're hearing this is going to be the first tranche of announcements, and there's 3 main focuses: strategic industries, so things like mining, longer term projects that are not necessarily shovel ready, which could be potentially things like Ring of Fire or other projects that are a priority to provinces. And then thirdly,
wait, I thought they were supposed to be all shovel ready.
Well, there's three criteria, and the third one is trade related. So we're talking about ports. Now, of course, I think pipelines would make a good sense, and I think we want them. But these are discussions that are going to take time. Just to be a realist, it's been 6 months, and I know they've said drill, baby, drill, we're ready to go. But it does take time, and provinces are getting on board, which is why we probably saw Danielle Smith's tone to be a bit more measured in what she does. So I know tomorrow we're going to see the Prime Minister and folks like Don Farrell and Minister Hodgson announcing what's the first tranche of that. Right. And I think that we have to remember that we're looking at it in this lens.
Well, the Prime Minister said second tranche by Grey Cup. Last word to you, Jamie.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons why you don't see a pipeline here, Vashi, is because people who build pipelines were essentially told for the past 10 plus years that they weren't welcome to do business in Canada. And we actually had to nationalize the expansion of the Kinder Morgan pipeline to actually see that project through after result of the previous government's policies. So I think what we're going to see tomorrow is effectively day one of Prime Minister Carney losing his political cover of pointing backwards and blaming the previous guy for our current challenges and kind of laying the groundwork. I think the fact that the Major Projects Office is being headed by an industry veteran and quite frankly getting praise from accolades from across the political spectrum, across the Western Canada and across the business industry for knowing how to do these things. She gets both the government side and the energy industry side to move this forward. And I think tomorrow's kind of the starting day for getting a lot of these things in the ground. I think you're going to have a lot of people try and debate what utopia ought to be and how to do this perfectly. But those debates kind of maybe play to political extremes and those in the political debate, but they're not going to actually attract the investment dollars needed to get all these things going. Because at the end of the day, taxpayers can't foot the bill for all of this. And that inherently lies the challenges Prime Minister Carney faces in getting these projects online quickly.
Okay, that list is coming tomorrow. Can't wait to get your analysis after, everyone. Thanks so much for making the time. Our front bench, Laura D'Angelo, Sebastian Skamsky, Sharon Carr, and Jamie Ellerton. We're back in a moment with the latest from Washington. Welcome back to Power Play. We're continuing our coverage this evening of the death of Charlie Kirk, a 31-year-old key Donald Trump supporter and MAGA organizer who was shot and killed in Utah this afternoon. The President of the United States himself posting on social media to confirm the death of Charlie Kirk. My colleague, Washington Bureau Chief Joy Melvin, has been tracking this development all afternoon. She's with us live from Washington at the moment. Joy, thanks so much for coming back. I understand that we are expecting perhaps at about 6 o'clock Eastern an update from officials on this. What do we know so far?
Well, not a lot. We've certainly heard from a lot of eyewitnesses who were there. Many Canadians may not know the name Charlie Kirk, but he was a massive figure in the MAGA movement. Some called him the Trump Whisperer. He was a radio host, a podcaster, a TikToker, and he often had these open-air debates, very controversial issues, promoting Christian values, taking issue with trans rights, that sort of thing. But he often talked about having an open dialogue, a debate. Police and the president have confirmed that he was shot in the neck and he died in hospital. They have mentioned that the FBI is on the scene and that a gunman, and this is very troubling, is still on the loose. So we don't know who targeted Charlie Kirk, but certainly the White House is in shock. You can see behind me, sorry, there it is. Flags have been lowered. The president ordered that to honor Charlie Kirk, who was very important to his campaign and a close friend.
Yeah, in Donald Trump's statements this afternoon and this evening certainly reflect that. We're just learning also, we anticipate at 6 o'clock Eastern, so just a few minutes from now, to hear from law enforcement officials as well as the governor of Utah. You mentioned the suspect in this case. Initially, the university said the individual was in custody. They later retracted that. A very busy scene there. I mean, hundreds of people had gathered. This happened just, in the middle of all that.
Yeah, eyewitnesses were telling NBC that that Charlie Kirk was taking questions about mass shootings, about transgender issues as well when the shooting happened. Another eyewitness said that they had seen police tackle an elderly person, and then everyone thought, okay, this is the suspect, must be in custody. So a lot of confusion. That was not the suspect, and it is very troubling because they say the shooter still has not been found, so we should get an update soon. We've talked to you and I personally about this before, that Charlie Kirk was really key to Donald Trump's election success. He attracted a lot of young people. He attracted a lot of young male voters that was crucial to Trump's campaign. But this country is really struggling with political violence, and you're hearing more and more people talk about it. You see it on social media. There's a lot of tribalism in this country. You're either right-wing or you're left-wing, and where people used to be able to agree to disagree, there's a lot of violent rhetoric out there. We've seen 2 attempts on the president's life, CEO shootings, Minnesota lawmakers have been targeted, and the rhetoric has just been amped up really on both sides. And tonight we're hearing from Republicans and Democrats condemning this political violence and saying that we really have to do better as a nation.
Yeah, very much so. Joy, I'll leave it there. I appreciate you making time for the update. Joy Malbon is our Washington bureau chief, as you can see there live in D.C. for us. As Joy mentioned, any moment now, we are anticipating an update on the shooting and killing of key Trump supporter Charlie Kirk from officials in Utah, including the government. We will, of course, share that with you as soon as we get it. I'm going to leave Power Play there. Thanks for watching.